Hello, my beautiful friends. If you're listening to this episode on the day it's released on June 25th, it is the final day to take advantage of the special offer for the Foundation Mastermind community. If you don't already know, this is the private membership community that we've created for folks like you who are looking to identify, launch, and grow a business that supports the vision that they have for their life of abundance. Within the community, members will get access to exclusive content that will assist you in clarifying your entrepreneurial vision. This includes live webinars and interaction with myself and special guest mentors. You'll also be plugging into a group of like-minded, aspiring entrepreneurs for amazing networking, support, and accountability. And if you sign up before midnight Eastern Time tonight, you'll be able to take advantage of our special launch offer of half off your membership fees for the first 3 months. That brings your monthly cost down to only $23.50, which is less than a lot of you probably spend on coffee in a month, which, hey, I'm not bashing it. Get your caffeine on. But I'm just saying this is a killer deal. Oh yeah, and there's a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not in love with your experience for whatever reason. So there's literally zero risk to joining. Take advantage of this special offer before it's gone forever. Head over to millennialmm.com/foundation to learn more and grab your spot today. And with that, enjoy today's episode with the amazing Jacob Baadsgaard.
The outcome of what you're trying to build matters a lot less, and who are you going to be along the way is what really matters the most. And that to be your best, focus on what matters most to you. And what are the routines that you're going to prioritize in your life to keep you balanced on those things? Because if I went back and had the morning routine that I have now and the priorities when it comes to family, spirituality, physical health, man, I let all those things slide for the first number of years with the business. And I'm still recovering and breaking down some of those bad habits that I built along the way and replacing those with better ones.
Hello, folks, and welcome. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Jake Baadsgaard in the Mastermind. Jake is the founder and CEO of Disruptive Advertising, a digital marketing agency that has helped hundreds of companies realize unprecedented growth and profitability from online advertising. In the 6 years since its founding, the company has grown from 2 employees working in Jake's basement to a flourishing agency with more than 120 employees and a run rate of over $18 million, putting it at number 145 on the Inc. 500 list in 2017. Beyond running a successful digital marketing agency, Jake also has a personal goal of creating 50 millionaires. So Jake, welcome to the show, my friend. Wow, words are not my ally today.
Brad, I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, no, I'm excited too. I'm thrilled to hear a little bit more about your journey into entrepreneurship. It sounds like you've seen some explosive growth there at Disruptive Advertising, and I'm sure you've learned a lot in those 6 years. So to kick things off, I would love just to understand how you got interested in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, you bet. It's interesting. This path that we take in life rarely gets us where we thought we were going to go. I never thought I'd actually be an adult, and that I'd be married, and I've got 3 kids, and my 4th one on the way, cooking in the oven. And marketing was not something I ever even thought of. Right? I got my degree in information systems. I was working at a hot tech company in Utah at the time called Omniture, later bought by Adobe, and helping enterprise, Fortune 100 companies implement just very robust web analytics and helping them get insights from that data to see what was working and what wasn't working from their marketing dollars. And really 2 things happened. One is I saw that this is a great solution that we're bringing to the table, but really the value comes in the action that come from the insights in the data, not just having the data. and realizing that there was a disconnect in the market there. Everyone was very excited to get data. Big data has been a buzzword for a long time now, but most companies lacked the bandwidth or expertise or both to actually act on that. And so just seeing that over and over again, and then realizing that there was an opportunity there. One year I sat down for my annual review, and we had a pretty large division in the company, kind of going over, hey, it looks like you're a top performer again, and here's your standard or above average 8 or 9%. I can't remember what the raise was, and just sitting there in that moment and saying, I'm supposed to feel good about this. I'm supposed to feel excited about this, but I just don't. And that was really, it wasn't that day that I made the move, but it was that day that my heart realized that I needed something different than I was going to get in corporate America, where I could create an environment where I could grow at my pace. And that's ultimately what led me to start disruptive advertising. Is I had no issue with where I was working. It was just realizing I needed an environment for growth that met the needs that I have, and kind of just had to create that in order to facilitate it.
Yeah, that really strikes a chord with me and aligns with a lot of the feelings that I've had over the years about performance within a corporate environment, and I'm sure that resonates with some of our listeners, where you're kicking ass and you just hit a ceiling where you realize that you can only do so much or make so much or be compensated so much, even though you might be the top performer in a company and you're making a lot of money for somebody else or for other people, but you're kind of limited. So was disruptive advertising then your first entrepreneurial venture from moving on from that corporate role?
It's my second one. The other one was fairly short-lived but lucrative, and kind of gave me a lot of the capital that I needed to accelerate starting and growing disruptive advertising. But just had a small wholesaling company that did pretty well selling software, but a lot of those eventually moved to the cloud and kind of cut out middlemen like myself. And so just used those funds to get myself and my family into a good situation, seed the company some money, and then not needing to take a salary or a reduced salary for a while to get things off the ground.
Oh, that's incredible. And so what were the early days like as an entrepreneur? Like, were there any specific factors that you could look back and say that they helped contribute to the early success?
Yeah, for sure. And my background is, I grew up in a family of 10 kids. And, since the time I was 8, I've had a job, because if I didn't want hand-me-downs, or if I wanted, the candy or enough of it that I wanted, it's like, I got to go earn some money and figure out how to make this happen. And so I had a paper out since I was 8 years old, and really just learned that, look, hard work is hard work. And I'm actually okay with that, because it gets me where I want to go, and just have been pretty consistent with that my whole life. And so I feel like that was a good tool that I just had on the belt in getting things started, and just having a little bit more realistic expectation of, hey, this is going to be a lot of work. And if I am consistent and persistent in this effort, it'll pay off, and it's not going to be immediate. There's not a lot of silver bullets in life, and that don't require a lot of effort and produce millions of dollars. And so just realizing that, I think that was one of the things that was probably the most helpful out of the gate. And I also, kind of coming from that background and environment, my father's actually worked at a credit union, basically his whole career. And so was really raised with very, very, very conservative financial principles. And while I'm definitely the anomaly in my family, those definitely have had an influence on how I approach things. And like I mentioned earlier, I did make sure that I was in a position where I didn't feel like I was risking the well-being of my family. Yeah, maybe we're not getting ahead financially if this doesn't work out, and there's some risk. But I made sure that we had enough money saved, and that we were in a position to go all in and have enough runway that I didn't have to put too much stress on my family and kids, and I could just kind of get after it and go for it. So those are a couple of things that I would say were helpful and my way of doing it. That doesn't mean that's the only way to do it, but that's how I chose to approach it. And I do feel like it was helpful up front in helping us succeed.
So you bring up an interesting point, being money mindset and how some of what we unconsciously absorb from our parents can impact our decision making and our thought processes. Was there any downside, or were there any other effects that you noticed with having grown up in that conservative financial atmosphere?
Oh yeah. And with anything, there are just trade-offs, right? And so I wouldn't describe my upbringing as good or bad. It was just it is what it is. And it gave me some trade-offs. The good ones were hard work, conservative financially, not stretching myself out really further than I should. On the flip side of that, it can make it a little harder to take risk. And I remember when things were going pretty well and I decided, hey, you know what, I'm going to get myself my first pretty cool car. And kind of as a reward, something to celebrate, be excited about. And so this was in 2013, end of 2013. I got an Audi A7, and man, I just thought this was the coolest car in the world. And I loved the car. But what's funny, Brad, is I was leasing it, and I had it for like 18 months, and I never felt comfortable driving it. Because I always felt like, oh, this is such an irresponsible thing to do, or what do other people think about this, or whatever, to the point where I actually ended up just turning it back in because of that. And, there's some interesting emotional baggage behind, hey, I can't even let myself just enjoy some of the success and things that come with that because of that upbringing as well. At least that was a part of, contributing to those thoughts around it. And so that's kind of the first thing that came to mind when you asked that question.
Yeah, that's very interesting. With the kind of risk aversion that you've identified within yourself, has there been times or a time when you've recognized that, but there was also a risk that you noticed, that saw that there was an opportunity on the other side of that you either did or didn't take that risk? And I would just love to dig into that a little bit.
I remember signing the lease for our first office space. It was in September of 2013. And putting my name on that line. I think the lease payment was like $8,000 a month for the office space. And kind of in an older business park. And Brad, I remember as I'm signing this, I'm like, this is going to suck so bad when this business doesn't work out, and I'm stuck paying $8,000 a month for this, right? And I remember having these conversations with my wife. I'm like, should I really do this? We've got a good situation. We don't have to go in this direction. And this is where having a good partner in crime, I think, comes in handy. And my wife just said, look, Jake, this isn't really the path that I would choose, because like entrepreneurship, the risk, the work and the effort that goes into this, she's like, that's not what I would choose for myself, but I realize that that's who you are. And I think that if you don't just go for it, you'll always regret not just going for it. And I'd love to support you in that. And in those moments where it's been hard for me to just make the decision on that key hire, or investing in something in the business, or signing that bigger office lease, or taking some of those risks. It's actually been great. And I've definitely don't have a perfect marriage. We've had plenty of our own challenges, but man, it's been great to have her just say, you know what, I know you, and I know you're not going to be happy if you don't just go for it. So just go for it and it'll be okay. And it's been nice to have that support.
Yeah, that's huge. And I know you mentioned that you have 3 kids currently. How old, or did you have any kids at that point in 2013 when you were just getting started?
Yeah, so we had 2 at the time. And then we had our third in 2015, right in the middle of getting things going and ramping. Yep.
And I asked that question because I think a lot of listeners are millennials who are starting to get to that age, may already have kids, may be thinking about kids. Some it may not be applicable at all, but when that does come into the picture, you start thinking of, all right, this is no longer just me that I have to think about. There's a family. I have to put food on the table. I have to be there. And this isn't just for, single or for married folks or somebody who's the sole provider, but even if you're not, there's still a responsibility that you feel. So what was your mindset, or what advice might you have for individuals that do have a family to think about, but still have that passion and know that they want to go down that entrepreneurial route?
Yeah. And the fun thing about that is the answer to that question is different for everybody, right? And so my experience with that is my wife and I have invested quite a bit in our relationship through marriage counseling and getting support and learning, how to work on our marriage and on ourselves and how to do that. And one of the practices that we've found to be helpful that we do on a fairly regular basis is we're having that Sunday evening chat, and I get to ask, her name is Teresa, and I'll say, Teresa, what would 80-year-old Teresa counsel you? What would she have to say about life right now and things that she would feel like you should be focused on or doing? And then she'll ask me the same question. What does 80-year-old Jake say? And, it's kind of interesting to just put ourselves in that mindset of saying, when I'm 80 and I look back, what are the things I'm really going to have cared about? And for me, the answer is, growing and building a business that's making an impact in the world is very important to me. And every time we've had that question about kids and feeling like, is there another one in there? And we ask ourselves from the perspective of, what would 80-year-old Jake and 80-year-old Teresa say? We've both just had that overwhelming feeling of that there is the chance that we would totally regret it if we didn't. We don't know for sure if we would regret it, right? But there's a reasonable chance that we would. And so that's kind of where we've gotten that context and flavor from, is asking ourselves the question from that state of mind. And for us, at least for now the fourth one on the way, that's been the answer is, I think there's zero chance that we regret having the kid when we're 80. And a reasonable chance, there's zero chance that we would regret it. And at least some chance that we would regret not doing it. And that's kind of what's played into making the decisions around that. And then I would also add that the motivation behind succeeding at work changes when it's beyond myself and even beyond just myself and my spouse. I have to be scrappier and more innovative to make things work during more normal business hours so I can still have time with my kids. And I actually think it drives more innovation and creativity because I have to figure out how to do it in less time if I still want to be a dad and I still want to be a husband. And I think what it's actually pretty helpful for is just eliminating the things that we waste a lot of time and energy on, especially in a startup or a high growth company, that actually don't matter that much. It forces me to prioritize a little bit more. And I found that the things that I have to let go of typically don't even end up mattering that much anyway.
I absolutely love the what would your 80-year-old self counsel you in this situation advice, because it's just like you said, helps put things in perspective and look at your current situation through a different lens, and really takes you out of it, which is so hard to do when you're in the midst of a challenging situation or have an opportunity or a big decision. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think it segues also into something interesting that I read about you, and that's that you have a goal of creating 50 millionaires. So tell me about that. What's that all about? Where did that come from?
So I participate in a group called the Entrepreneurs Organization. Great organization for anyone that is a founder, co-founder, or substantial owner in a startup that is doing over $1 million in revenue. And it's been a great outlet for me, a great resource as I get together with other entrepreneurs and share experiences and learn from each other. Well, we go on an annual retreat together, and one member of the group is assigned the content that we need to come prepared with to present and share with the group. And one year it was just come with your vision board, right? And so as I'm putting my vision board together, my natural inclination in my first version of the vision board was like, here's the amount of money I want to make. This is how big I want the company to get. This is, the happy smiling faces of me and my family going to fun and exotic places, and kind of just feeling out a little bit more of like, here's all the things I want.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was putting that together, and it was actually kind of fun, but also was surprisingly not that fulfilling or motivating to even work on it, right? Because I started to realize that while those things are cool in and of themselves, they weren't what was really that motivating to me. And so I remember looking at that sheet and saying, well, geez, would I be happier like dying with like 50 million bucks in the bank? Or would I be happier if I'm like die surrounded by 50 people that we like figured out how to win at life and succeed together? And so that's where I kind of just shifted. I wanted a net worth of 50 million when I put that together. This is a number of years ago. And I just said, that's not the goal anymore. I want 50 relationships that we learn how to win at life together and succeed together. And that's how I just made it more of a tangible goal, is to say, and that's the kind of impact that I want to have, because A, that just sounds more fun anyway. And B, that's what's gonna make my life fulfilling and enjoyable, is being surrounded with like-minded people that, hey, we're just here to figure out life together and win and succeed. And so that's where that goal came from. And it's interesting because I continue to work with coaches from the beginning through now and will always, either for the business or personally or whatever that is. And so it's been nice to get a little bit of challenge from time to time. Well, Jake, what are you doing about that? How are you making that happen? And I actually have an optional 2 courses that I teach at the company. One of them is a personal and leadership development course, and teaching people how to build good daily routines and habits that, when done consistently over a long period of time, can really have an amazing impact in their personal and professional lives. And then we also have a class on a financial class where we give people the tools and skills that they need to understand and how to manage money and work towards building wealth and becoming millionaires from a financial aspect as well, but developing a healthy relationship with that money, understanding how to give that value to the world so that we can get that back, and approaching that as well. So I've put together a couple of courses that are optional, and it's been fun. I've already had probably about 65, a little less than half the company has gone through the personal leadership development course, and then just getting going on the financial one. So it's been interesting because it allows me to stay focused on what the big goal is, and use the environment and the people that I work with at Disruptive Advertising to work towards hitting that goal. And it's fun. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. And with the, I want to dive into one of those courses a little bit, because I love the idea of actually providing those growth opportunities to your employees and to these human beings that you want to invest back into. When it comes to the one with building good routines and habits, are there any top 1 or 2 pointers that you might be able to share in terms of that process, or what you educate them on?
Yeah. So it's a 10-week course, and there's really 3 outcomes that we're looking for, which is developing meaningful habits, learning how to change and influence the world by changing ourselves, and then actually putting together I don't refer to it as a vision board, but I call it a painted picture of, hey, this is the map of where I'm at and where I'd like to be. And now I kind of know how to get there, right? And the things that I get to wake up every morning and do that are going to help me get there. And so I've got a couple of books that were impactful for me that are kind of the framework that we read together, and then have accountability around and do those things. When it comes to the daily habits, we actually base that on the principles in the book of The Miracle Morning by, I think it's Hal Elrod.
Yep. He's a 2-time guest on this show. We love Hal here.
Oh, great. Yeah. And so, I mean, I've done the 6 lifesavers for years in my life now. And of course I do it with my own spin and flavor, and so does everybody else. But, I'm really consistent with those things. And that's what we focus our time on. That first month of the class is people actually commit to not using their phone for anything other than as a tool to communicate with people, via phone or texting, but no social media, no games, no anything else, no browsing, no news, no anything. And then we actually have 10 weeks of practicing a miracle morning together and getting that daily routine dialed in.
Wow, that's super cool. And is that something that then I assume people opt into take that course?
Yeah, they actually have to enroll and pay to be in the course. And there's like kind of a zero tolerance for, you got to be 100% attendance, complete all the assignments, follow through on all your commitments. And if they complete the course and graduate, they get their $500 back plus a $500 bonus. If they make one mistake, they lose all the financial reward. And if they make 2 mistakes, they're actually excused from the class and are not allowed to graduate.
I love the accountability.
Yeah. So it's $1,000 mistake, don't mess that up. And okay, great. You can still graduate, but you mess up twice, you're actually just excused from the class.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. And as I'm sure no entrepreneurial journey is complete without its fair share of challenges and failures. So would there be any stories you might be able to share about a time that you ran into either a challenge or failed at something, and what impact or advantage that ultimately had for you?
So the one that comes top of mind when you ask that question is, and I'll use a specific example, but this happens so many times that I'll kind of frame it, is things aren't working out, right? And sometimes it's hard to understand why. Is it the performance metrics? Is it just a lack of core values? Is it just not the right fit? And this applies to customers, and this also applies to employees. A lot of the times we think it only applies to employees, but it actually applies to customers as well. And in getting the business going, I wasn't great at holding people accountable because I felt like it was mean to hold people accountable. That's what I told myself. And I had this complex of wanting to be seen as the nice person, right? And when someone's not performing and you tell them they're not performing, God, that feels kind of mean, right, Brad? And so I would say that was an area that I struggled with more earlier on in the business. And there's a couple of situations where it's actually the worst thing. It's actually the meanest thing that we can do to anybody is by not holding them to a high standard and holding them accountable, because we're saying, hey, I'm okay with you not being that great of a version of yourself. And, you should feel okay with that too. That's really what that's saying, which doesn't help them, doesn't help the business, doesn't help me. And probably the biggest life lesson that I learned from that was not being more specific, not being more direct, not having more accountability, eventually letting someone go. And because I didn't just make it happen earlier on in the relationship, it actually ended up in this really bizarre lawsuit, right? Where they felt like they weren't dealt with in a way that I've never been able to quite comprehend how they've put all those pieces together. But I look back and say, I ended up dealing with that for like 2.5 years. It was expensive and emotional, and ended up working out in the end. But I learned, it burned into my soul that there needs to be an ongoing dialogue and a high degree of accountability if I actually care about the person. And if I'm willing to get out of my own way and not have this complex of, I need to be seen as the nice person, so I can't do that. And I'll tell you, after going through that entire experience, I thought, never again will I not have open, regular, and direct accountability and dialogue around performance and fit in the company. And man, that sure burned it into my soul to have to learn that the hard way. And yeah, there can be unreasonable or, I guess I'll just leave it at that, unreasonable people to work with on those things that have a skewed version of reality. But man, that's probably what I would point to the most.
That resonates so closely because I'm definitely a people pleaser, someone who wants to be liked, somebody who wants to be nice and to be thought of that way. Have you ever heard of the book Radical Candor by Kim Scott?
Yeah, it's actually one of our core values now at the company.
There you go. I was going to say it aligns so well. I had the opportunity to connect with Kim on the show, and it helped open my eyes to exactly the perspective that you're sharing, that sometimes actually having those candid conversations, and I shouldn't say sometimes, but if you're coming from the right place where you're looking to find a solution, help somebody grow, get better, and improve what they might be currently lacking at, you're doing them so much more of a service than if you said nothing and waited until it got to a point where you can't help get them back on the right track. So I think that's a really good point that you bring up there. Another question that is I love to ask, and I think you'll appreciate this question given your advice of asking if the 80-year-old version of yourself, what advice they might have for you. But I'm going to take it the other way and say, if you could go back in time in a time machine and give advice from where you're sitting now to the younger version of yourself, so maybe Jake at circa 2012, before launching this business that you have today, is there one piece of advice that you would give to yourself at that stage in the game?
Yeah. Well, the challenge is I don't know how good I would be at listening. So we'll throw that out there. But the things that I would go back and just say, look, the outcome of what you're trying to build matters a lot less, and who are you going to be along the way is what really matters the most. And that to be your best, focus on what matters most to you, and what are the routines that you're going to prioritize in your life to keep you balanced on those things. Because if I went back and had the morning routine that I have now, and the priorities when it comes to family, spirituality, physical health, man, I let all those things slide for the first number of years with the business. And I'm still recovering and breaking down some of those bad habits that I built along the way and replacing those with better ones. And that's what I would counsel and bring back to the table. And probably a lot less advice around, hey, you should do this or this tactically with the business as you're growing it.
That I think is very powerful because we could use the busyness and the chaotic time frame of starting a business as an excuse to get into some of those bad habits, but what are the long-term effects? And a lot of times it's hard to think about that when you're in the moment, and it's not till you get 5-6 years down the road that you realize that you've dug yourself into this rut, and it's so much harder to get out of that than to have the good habits the whole time or starting in the beginning.
Well, and that's what makes the process enjoyable, because at the end of the day, when I die, it's not really going to matter how big the company got, right? It's who was I during the process, and did I enjoy the process? That's what's going to matter. And that's why I almost wouldn't even want to give myself a lot of shortcuts from a business standpoint. It's like that's the fun part, the things that we wish we didn't have to deal with. That's actually the fun part of building a business. It's just keep your priorities straight, focus on what matters, and be the best version of you along the way, and just enjoy it. Enjoy the good times, enjoy the hard times, and that's what leads to just a good, fulfilling life.
Well, Jake, if people are listening to this and they're loving everything that you're saying and they want to learn more about you or the company, is there anywhere that you would point them to learn more?
Yeah, I'd love to connect. I'm the most active on LinkedIn. It's Jake or Jacob Baadsgaard. There's 4 A's in Baadsgaard. It'll be pretty easy for you to find me. I'd love to connect there. And then from a business standpoint, just check us out at disruptiveadvertising.com. Companies hire us because they lack the bandwidth or expertise from the marketing standpoint to grow to the next level. And so that's what companies use us for.
Amazing. Jake, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate everything that you've shared, your level of openness and transparency from your journey and the things you've learned along the entrepreneurial path. So we appreciate you being here today, and I want to just offer you a heartfelt thank you.
Thanks, Brad. It's been a great experience.